Hey, hey. So I think we were talking with Dan in that last session, and so is he there?
Yes.
Hey,
Hey,
hey.
hey. Yeah, I think that kind of just wraps up my questions that I had, and thank you very much for that.
You're so welcome. And so just again to revisit, like the idea of observing, you're kind of going through stages. First, you're observing the body and then the emotions. Even when you have like an emotion come up, like in a situation, you kind of observe it like, oh, look, I'm upset or I'm afraid, or like sometimes it might not even be that clear. Like you just feel like there's some sort of angst that I feel, or like you just feel a little like off. But even
Mm.
that a lot of times is a neurological loop. And it's also tied to like in different traditions, they'll use things like bells, or how the Tibetans use the bowls or a bell, and
Mm.
uh, different traditions might have a big bell, or there was a church bell or something like that. On one level, yes, it's very like kind of energetically cleansing. But like when you start doing the practice of being aware of the body, you'll be aware, and then you start like ringing the bell or tapping the bowl or hitting the gong. Part of what's happening is it's even deeper way of resetting the nervous system. Like it's a way to like break out of those trauma loops. So a lot of
Right.
times when people do like the bells and the bowls, it's very nice. It's very relaxing. It feels good. It's a reset to the nervous system. But the deeper practice is you really spend time observing, observing the body, the emotions of the mind, and you try to get it to the most subtle part that you can at that time. And a lot of times, even in the body, the place where you'll a lot of times notice like the most like tension is really close to the bones, like like in your legs or in your spine, or really close to there. And if you sit with it, you'll go, oh, there's some weird kind of agitation there. And it's not even like agitation, it's just like it's not as relaxed as other areas, or there's a like a tension there. And if you can keep your awareness on it, and then you ring the bell or you hit the gong or the,
Oh, okay.
all of a sudden there's like a reboot that happens to that part of the nerves. And you'll kind of cycle through it and you're like, oh boy, it expanded there a little bit. And then you come back and you go, okay, but what do I feel in the body? What do I feel if I go deeper? And the idea is to always be trying to move to something more subtle, because even like observing the body versus observing your thoughts, there's a big difference between how easy it is for your body versus your thoughts that arise. Because the thoughts aren't gross like this. There's not a force.
Yeah, yeah.
So they'll arise and you'll go, oh, like I'm thinking about that weird thing at the grocery store. And then all of a sudden your mind kind of bounces off of it. And then it's hard to grasp. So a lot of times the thoughts are just kind of passing like clouds. Like, you're watching internal clouds in your head. And you keep watching that because even in the body, it's shifting. So it's transient. But when you get up into the thoughts, you don't have the thing to anchor on. And really, what you're beginning to do is you're beginning to observe essence. And if
Mm.
we're going back to what you were asking about before, about the point of light, 12 inches above your head, when you're up 12 inches above the head, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to observe your essence, and
Mm.
much harder to do than observing the body. And so it's like you just kind of keep doing these little gradual things. And then pretty soon your ability to have your attention up there becomes easier, but you're starting to observe actually more of your nature, more of that essence, more of the downpouring of either guidance or energy or light, whatever you want to call it, that's coming from the higher soul. And so it's something that like the more that you practice it, the more it becomes refined and it becomes easier. And when you start to be able to see the essence or observe the essence like up above your head, then out here in the normal everyday life, you are able to more appropriately put yourself in the right place at the right time, because you might see form, but you're starting to see essence there. And you're starting to see people's intentions, and you can see like the motions and the motivations of things where you're like, oh, I should stay out of that. And it's not
Oh,
intellect. It's more like intuitive, but it becomes easier for you to manage your way through
or navigate.
yeah, the obstacles of normal everyday life. Even the practice of trying to overcome obstacles is a different way of practicing the same thing. You know, you're like, okay, how do I observe this obstacle and how do I go around it or go over it or whatever it might be? How do I observe the intuitive drive to deal with the obstacle in front of me?
Oh,
And so
yeah.
it's different ways of processing intuition and clairvoyance, and because so many times here it's not so much the case because we don't talk about it like that, but outside of here, people see a clairvoyance as just like being able to do the hypotheticals of the intellect to a much greater degree, and what color is that piece of paper in the envelope, and all kinds of things where it's like almost like tricks for the intellect. But clairvoyance really is beyond just trying to see energy around a person or what color is something, what color is the energy around the body. It's this ability to observe more and more subtle things that the normal mind doesn't see. And I remember having a conversation with a guru, and the one that empowered my clairvoyance back when I was really stuck in my head. Um, and the next time I saw him, he was like, "How is your clairvoyance?" And I was like, "It's okay." And he looked at me like, "I gave you a priceless gift, and it's just okay." And I go, "Let me explain myself." And I said, "The thing is, yes, I'm seeing more, but it's almost like there's this area that it's really easy to get stuck in. Like if
Mm.
you still kind of have that idea of like what intellect is, and like, oh, what color is this and what does this mean and what does that mean? It's like you kind of get like stuck in this place and it doesn't really keep developing. And what I said to him was that I go, yeah, I can see energy and I can see blockages and people, and when I'm doing healings and everything, I go, but there's more there. Like there, I could see that there's something past that, and to not get attached to those things is the key. Like, because it's very easy to go, oh, I got this little secret piece of information, or oh, I can show how
Right.
smart I am
I
by
can see
seeing
that.
this,
I can
or
see that.
or
Yeah.
showing like, look at me. And he listened to me and he goes, "Who told you that?" And I go, Nobody told me that. It's just I can see the things that everybody talks about with clairvoyance, but there's something past that that seems like amazing and a little bit harder to touch, but it's more intriguing." And he was quiet and he leaned into me and went, "Very good. Very good." And as we talk about it in these practices with Astara and everything, I try to always instill that in the practices where we don't get super caught in like just like trying to be a little smarter than, like I know where that piece of paper is, or I know where that lost key is, or whatever it is. Like, yeah, maybe it helps, but there's something past all that kind of stuff. And talking about this refinement of observation, the body, and then the emotions and the thoughts, and then higher up, all of that is really how we unfold the gifts that has come along with the soul, and we begin to diminish our suffering on so many levels. And it's you could say intuition and clairvoyance is like a deep form of healing, a very deep form of healing.
Wow. Wow. Thanks for the share. Thank you
Yeah.
so
Oh
much.
my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So keep observing that point.
Okay.
That's the thing that I was, like the more that you refine it, the more that you're able to go up to that point and observe it. It's a hard one to observe, but like if you keep refining your observation there, it bears a lot of fruit. A lot
Okay.
of,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Okay, great. Yeah, I'll let someone else jump in. I mean, I could continue the
Yeah,
conversation
nice
here, but
talking to
yeah.
you.
Yeah. Very good.
And then go ahead, Lavanya, and then we had share in chat as well.
Hey, Lavanya.
Let's get
Hey,
back up.
Greg. So thank you for sharing. I mean, both of those talks were very helpful, and I'm going to have to go to the recording and re-listen again. So one question I have,
Mhm.
it's personal. And what if like one catches more lower emotions of other people? Like, I think it's more of a clairsentient or something. So they know what's going on with other people and they're constantly
Yeah,
picking them in their body.
right.
And then it's scary to even watch that. And it triggers one's own fears, and then
Sure.
it gets like a very um, overwhelming experience.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would say the same thing that we're talking about, like where we practice like feeling things in the body, and then you can go to practicing the sometimes we do this practice where like think of a person or think of an event or an active situation and just observe it. You're not trying to relax it or release it or define it, or you just observe it. And that is very much an issue sometimes where you feel other people's things, and then your body has a reaction. And I would say the more that we're able to observe others and then observe ourselves going into the body, you also kind of start breaking out of that because in a way that's a loop. That's the same kind of loop. And in a way that helped maybe at certain points in our life where we could feel those things, and like this person's getting upset, I need to be quiet, or I got to be sensitive on the things that I say. But after a while it just starts to be overwhelming. Like you go to the store or Costco and it's like, ugh, I'm feeling everybody's stuff. And I would say the more that you observe outward and then you come back and you observe inward, you also because sometimes when we feel those things coming from other people, it also feels like ours, or it starts to become like I have something I gotta manage. And even that is still like the intellect processing a piece of that intuitive part. And, a lot of times somebody might be gifted with that, or, born with that ability, or through things in life, you develop that ability. But the more that we're able to observe outward and then observe inward, it's like it won't turn that off, but it also will keep it like that's theirs, that's not mine, and I don't have to manage it. Because the reaction, because some teams you see things or sense things that are not nice or not pretty, but at the same time the intellect thinks we have to do something about it, or is trying to maintain like some sort of like perimeter so that nothing happens. And the more that we can turn on the intuitive components there, it's like the ability to like kind of stay out of the way of some of those things that you might see in other people or other situations. And so I would again I would say practice awareness on others You know, it doesn't have to be those people that where you see things, but you just go, okay, certain situations. You know, sometimes I'll even do it with things in the news. Like I'm going to sit with something, especially if it's a little bit upsetting. I'll sit and I'll just observe it. And sometimes it takes a couple of sittings. Like I don't, not even able to observe it in the first try. And I'll sit and observe and then go, okay, now where do I feel it in my body? And then I notice that when I see those things as they progress in the news cycle, I'm not reactive to them. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm watching things play out. And, you know, because even if you look at the things going on now, it's a change of an age. You know, we're going through a period where it's a change of an age and everything's breaking down and everything will get reestablished again. But, you know, big picture, it's eventually going to be for the good, right? But right now it's, you know, we're going from one week to the next or one month to the next, going, I hope it's good this week, or I hope it's good next month, or, you know, whatever it might be. But big picture, there's other things happening. And to be able to keep our alignment with the soul and not get dragged into everybody's stuff, you know, the things going on in the world or our family or the workplace, whatever it is really the key is through the observation, being able to observe and shift out of that intellectual reaction.
Thank you for that. So, where do we lean for strength during this processing? Like, it can be very, very overwhelming, and it can be so I might not sense it until like I am just really like an ounce of energy left. And where would we lean towards? Like, should
I
I
would
be?
say the
Yeah,
the more that you practice observation, the more you are tapping into the soul. And like the more that the soul energy comes in, the more you'll feel like an inner strength.
got it. Thank you.
Yeah. You're so welcome. And keep us posted, you know. We're always kind of practicing, but like whenever we do these, like let me know how you're doing in your process.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so
You're
much.
so welcome.
And then we had a share in chat, and it also had there's a question too.
Mhm.
Let me make it so it's a little easier for my eyes. Thank you so very much for this explanation. And that was a share when you were talking to Linda from the
Mhm.
Healing and Blessings. You are indeed wise and enlightened. It is my know-how about traumatic experience. In my lifetime, I have been an observer of people's behavior and my own. Conversely, awareness takes time and become enlightened as you are, Ben.
Oh, you're
Appreciate
sweet.
appreciate your mentorship. It has been helped me a lot with development and purpose that I want to achieve while in this life. It has been beyond my senses, my journey of challenging. Hopefully, with your help and support, I am able to better myself and help others. I have achieved a degree of human service with the intention to help others, but behavior has been my most specialization. In the other hand, I still have a long way to learn and come to yoga. I was about 19 years old when I first became interested in the yoga. It has been helped me to overcome challenging, but as you know, that some people goes through so much that it is impossible to comprehend why I am here. With your teachings, I am opening up to my others. Adding to your teaching, I have been doing the observing, and you have teachings. It is and it is amazing results. Thank
Oh,
you.
good. Yeah.
Awesomely. You must know that your teachings do work and it has real results. Question, does it have something to do with alchemy? If you could answer.
I would say yes. Like you know, alchemy is I mean, there's different aspects to alchemy, but if you look at even the old teachings of alchemy, they don't really lay it out as a step-by-step process. They do it a lot by images. And we are going to start teaching this idea of teaching through imagery, and we're going to use alchemical images, and we're going to use like images that like from the Buddhist tradition with like the tonkas and things. But we're also going to start teaching getting the imagery, information from the imagery from the Astara drawings in the books. And we have other drawings that didn't never made it to the books, but were from the original, writings and from Erlene back in the early days. And images are a much stronger way of getting information into the intuitive mind. Like the intellect likes all the details, but the intuitive part of the mind likes imagery. Like, it likes, if you think about like we're observing things, imagery is much more potent to the intuitive mind than it is to the intellect. And so in that sense, you are doing a type of alchemy. I mean, it is alchemy. And, not only are you doing alchemy, but, the idea of working with angels and even the idea of prayer is a kind of alchemy, because even for prayer, you're asking for something outside of the intellect. Even when you sit down, you go, either you're expressing gratitude or you're asking for help or guidance or for some healing. You're saying, I'm stepping out of intellect and I'm opened up to something bigger and better coming in. And even that is a step towards an alchemical process. And so even just simple prayers start to do that. And so all of these kind of come together as a process, and different practices, different traditions um, might have different names for it, but it is definitely an alchemical process. Even the idea of um, the modern day, we think of doing things like with astrology, where you're like, oh, I'm gonna read my horoscope, or I'm gonna get my chart done, and that's good, but there's aspects within each of the planetary energies that you really have to tap into with the intuitive mind that helps intuition and the soul develop to a certain degree that is well beyond getting your horoscope read or getting your chart done. Again, you're stepping outside of the intellectual mind and embracing something that is much bigger than the mind or even your life. And it's like you were saying, it's a wisdom practice. It is a wisdom practice, is an intuitive practice. It is seeing something outside of yourself. And so I would say the act of alchemy is the attempt or the approach to seeing things outside of your normal set of perceptions or going beyond the five senses. And so I would agree with that. It is an alchemical process, and it's a spiritual process. It's a mystical process. If you're working with angels, angelology, or in the old days they used to call working with angels theurgy. It was the act of like seeing outside of yourself and making your nervous system conductive to the angelic energies, which helps the intuitive mind evolve at a much more rapid rate. And it's the same idea of what alchemy is. It helps the intuitive mind develop at a much more um, accelerated rate. And so I would say, yes, keep doing your practice, keep doing the observation, external, internal emotions, your thoughts, even like being aware of your breath, as the air moves in and out of the nostrils. You just keep observing, and the information will come, the process will happen, the healing happens, and it also is a kind of protection in a way. So
Thanks so much, Craig.
you're so welcome.
Somebody's asking, what's the best way to connect with you?
To connect with me, send an email. You know, that's probably the easiest way. My schedule's kind of tight, but like the emails, at least it's on the list, and I'll get to it at some point. And so you're always welcome to send us emails, either
I
like
wrote the Greg at Astara.
yeah,
org,
perfect.
so.
Yeah. So
I had another quick question.
sure.
Yeah, what is there an angel associated with the point above the 12 inches above the head?
You could say the guardian angel, you could say probably Metatron, you know.
Yeah, that's the one
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
associated with the crown. Okay.
Yeah. So it's associated with a crown, but like even like Metatron is not necessarily the way that you would say the name, but it's like Metatron. Like
Throne. Right.
it's almost like saying throne, and you
Right.
could say like the archangel Metatron is the angel associated from like the veil or what's on the other side and bringing what's on the other side forth, right?
Okay.
Like into like awareness. And if you look at that point of light above the head, it would be bringing something into your conscious awareness from like the other side of awareness, or not having awareness. And so a lot of times, like sometimes you'll see in like Astara drawings and in the old Kabbalistic writings, they'll have a Star of David up on the 12th, that point of light,
Hmm.
12 inches above your head. In the Buddhist tradition, they'll have a double dorje, like a dorje like
Okay.
this and a dorje like this. And
Right.
then also, like in the Hindu tradition, they'll say Shiva sits 12 inches above your head. Um,
Okay. I've seen
you're
that.
you're
Yeah.
still trying to bring things from like the other side, but like the deeper is, instead of the Star of David, it's the Merkaba, or the
Tetragram.
yeah, like
Yeah.
the three-dimensional Star of David, which is like the
Yeah.
symbol or the imagery used for accessing Metatron. Yeah,
Right. Okay. Great.
yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Okay, you guys. Well, thanks for chatting and asking questions and everything. And we'll be doing this again. And next week we'll probably do practice, but we're always going to do questions. I'm going to try to mix it up both ways. And so hopefully we see you on Sunday or next week.